It all worked out really well. It's going to work out well. Some of you might be wondering, what are you going to do with your lives? It's all going to work out well. You're the smartest and the best, and it's going to work out great. Just call your parents once in a while, email them, and tell them it's working out, and it's going to be great. I've been a newspaper columnist at the Wall Street Journal now for a decade. I've been writing for 30 years. I write about life transitions. I write about those moments when life takes a turn. You know, you're born and you have your first breath, you get your first kiss. Today's a life transition. You're entering college. I write about first love. Who here fell in love on orientation? How many of you? It's the same Carnegie Mellon I remember. I like writing about life transitions with our kids because they don't know things we assume they know. I went to Disney World and I said, I'm going to stand by the statue of Walt Disney and I'm going to ask 100 kids walking by, who is that? And I did that, and only 34 kids could really tell me who Walt Disney was. One kid said he lives with Mickey Mouse in one of the hotels. One said he died on Space Mountain of a heart attack. Now, they didn't know because their parents didn't tell them. It's our job as parents to tell our children these things. What the world's all about, to tell them just, who the people are that matter in the world. If we don't tell them, they don't know. I like writing about aging. I thought, we're all getting older. Some of us were beautiful when we were young, less beautiful now. I thought, who can I go to and ask what that's like, the aging process? So I went to Robert Redford. I said, how's it feel? You're over 60. You were once so handsome. You still look good, but how's it feel? He said, let me tell you a story. He told me he was driving through New Mexico, and he stopped at an ice cream store. And he walked up in line, and the woman in front of him in line looked back, and she goes, oh, my gosh, it's Robert Redford. But she tried to play it cool, so she just stood there in line. Then she got her ice cream, and she left. And then the guy behind the counter said to Robert Redford, see that woman who just left? She put her ice cream cone in her purse. So Robert Redford knew he still had it. So life transitions. I find, I used to write an advice column for 14 years. I replaced Ann Landers at the Chicago Sun-Times. And I would find people would say the most amazing things as they go through their life transitions. I was on the Oprah show. A woman stood up in the audience. She said, I'm cheating on my husband. I'm having an affair with his best friend. I feel very guilty. Should I confess? I said, no, you told 10 million people watching this show. That's it. Don't tell anybody else. And I find people are confused with their life transitions. They're about to get married. They want to get married. I got a letter from a guy. He said, Dear Jeff, I'm dating Julie, a smart, beautiful woman. I'd consider marrying her. However, I'm a breast man and she's flat-chested. How do I suggest that she get implants? I wrote him back. I said, Julie deserves someone who will love her for who she is rather than what she looks like in a sweater. If you can't do that, you're the wrong man for her. And if you insist on surgery, she won't need it anyway because she'll already have a big boob in her life. You. All right. When I got back to the Journal, I wanted to write a story about the words, I love you. And my editor said, go ahead, give it a try. So my lead was this. There was a judge in Chicago whose daughter was going out on a Friday night. And before she left, she's a 17-year-old girl, she said to her father, I love you, Dad. And he said, I love you too. And then she left, and she died 5 minutes later in a car accident. So his last words to her were, I love you, and her last words to him were the same, I love you. Now, his wife was in the other room. She didn't get to say I love you to her daughter before she died. She didn't get that gift, if you can call it that. And so I wrote in the Wall Street Journal, gosh, all of us should say I love you to the people we care about. We should do it because you never know. And I got about 1,000 emails from readers saying they were going to tell their children they love them. And so what I like about my job is sometimes I'm just writing about the obvious, but by doing that, you can touch a lot of people and tell them things that will even change their lives, even though it's something simple. The best advice I got from the girls from Ames. Well, I'm a man. I'm still a guy's guy, so I'm not going to be this touchy-feely guy with my friends, but I do want my daughters to have what these 11 women had together. And just, women are friends in a different way than men are, and men have to realize that, and women have to realize that, and in the end, it's a great gift to have friends. And there's an old saying, you can make a new friend, you can't make an old friend, so hold tight to your old friends. So I did that. I wrote about how, we got to tell our kids to be chivalrous. We got to tell boys to honor their girls in their lives. We've got to tell parents to tell daughters, don't stand for that. There's a lot of college kids today, they're getting text messages at 3 in the morning. What are you doing? The answer shouldn't be, I'm not going to go do it with you, whatever I'm doing. So that was a good idea to tell readers of the Wall Street Journal, hey, talk to your kids about these things. And finally, before I talk to you about Randy, I write sometimes about the issues of fathers and daughters because, as I said, I have daughters. And I wrote a column about how a lot of girls look in the mirror and they say unkind things to themselves. I'm stupid, I'm fat, nobody likes me. And so it's a father's job to say, you're special and here's how. So I wrote a column for the Wall Street Journal. I got literally 1,000 emails from fathers saying, thanks for writing that. And one thing I had said in that column was, we can do simple things. You can just put a note in your daughter's lunchbox and say, I love you, honey, have a good day. So I heard from a lot of readers that they did that. And one reader said to me, he said he put a note in his daughter's lunchbox. She came home that day, she didn't mention it. He said, honey, did you get my note? And she said, I did that, and so did 4 other girls at the lunch table. What is with the notes and the lunches today? So that is the power of the Wall Street Journal. Of course, the most important thing I've ever written, the most meaningful thing is the last lecture with Randy Pausch. I'll tell you how that happened. I was at my desk at the Wall Street Journal. The phone rang, and it was the Carnegie Mellon Computer Science Department. They said they had a professor dying of pancreatic cancer, going to give his last lecture. So I thought maybe there's a story in this. Having gone here, I knew about the last lecture series. So I called Randy on the phone, and he was, I was nervous. What do you say to a dying man? But he was so engaging and fun. He was driving in his car on his cell phone. I said, Randy, I don't want to get in an accident. Do you want to pull over? He said, an accident, pancreatic cancer, just let's keep talking. So I got off the phone. I thought I'd really like to see him give this talk. But the plane ticket was $800 from Detroit, where I live. And so my editor said, just call him when it's finished and see how it went. But I decided to drive. There was something about Randy I thought I would drive. And I drove here, the 300 miles. And it was the best 300 miles I've ever driven because it was really an astonishing afternoon. He was the most alive person in the room that day. You know, you think of a dying person in their deathbed with the covers pulled up and a frown on their face. And there was Randy saying, I'm going to keep having fun every day I have left because there's no other way to play it. He had so many jokes. He said, I've had a deathbed conversion. I just bought a Macintosh. And it was like a nerd orgasm when he said that. The place just went crazy. So I wrote my column, the Pittsburgh media wrote about it, and the next day he was asked to go on Good Morning America. Then Oprah called. You know how famous he got. And there was interest in a book, and Randy wasn't sure he wanted to write a book, and he wasn't sure he wanted to do a book with me. He said, if we write this book together, I'm going to spend a large fraction of the rest of my life with you, so we better have fun and it better be meaningful. That's actually what my wife said to me when we got married, that same line. But I told Randy, I'm going to try to help you write a book that will touch your children and maybe reach people beyond that. And we set out to do that. And as you know, Randy wrote the book pretty much on his bike. He wanted to get exercise every day, and he would ride his bike around his neighborhood for an hour. And over 53 days, we talked by cell phone. While he had a cell phone headset on, we talked, and those 53 hours became the book. And there were things that were in the book that people just embraced. He talked about painting bedroom walls, and I started getting emails, first by the hundreds, eventually, more than 1,000 emails from people saying they're going to have their kids paint their bedroom walls. And Randy thought, gosh, they're taking me so literally. I meant let your kids be creative. But here people were saying, take this paintbrush, no dinner for you until you paint your bedroom. People say to me, Randy was a gifted storyteller. There are many people in the room here who knew him. People say to me, what was it about the last lecture that made people embrace it? And I think the reason was because it was authentic. When you go on YouTube and watch that lecture, you're seeing a man talking to his work family, his colleagues, and his students. And he's saying to them, go on without me and do great things. And he's saying to them, I love you. And as you're watching, you realize, oh my gosh, he's also talking to his kids. And he's saying to his kids, go on without me and do great things. And he's saying, I love you. And so there's so much junk and silly stuff on the internet, you've all seen it, that when you see something real and visceral like that, you want to share it. And that's what people have done all over the world. They've taken Randy's message and they've shared it. People say to me, how is Jay Pausch, Randy's wife, doing since Randy died? And I'll tell you this, if you've seen, who has seen the video of the last lecture? You've seen it, many of you have seen it. If you've watched the lecture, the toughest moment to watch is near the end. It was Jay's birthday. And he asked those of us in the room to sing happy birthday to her. And we were really singing through our tears because we knew it was our last birthday together. But anyway, he coaxed her onto the stage, and from where I was sitting, it looked as if she was whispering in his ear as she hugged him. And so I said to Jay, when I was working on the book, I said, Jay, what did you whisper in Randy's ear? And she said she had whispered, please don't die, the magic will go out of our lives. And so Randy and I put that in the book. And then we handed the book in to our editor in New York, and he thought, gosh, that's so sad, we can't leave that in the book. We've got to cut the second half of the quote, the magic will go out of our lives. And so we cut that second half of the quote. But now, tomorrow I'm going to be speaking at McConomy at 1:30. I'll be signing books and talking about behind the last lecture. But I often add that line back in there because it belongs there. Well, why am I telling you that? Jay told me a story about what happened a few months ago. She was at a water park in Florida having a great time with her 3 little kids. And at about 3 in the afternoon, she realized that she had lost the engagement ring Randy had given her. And so she was distraught. It was the most valuable thing he had given her. But as she was standing there in her wet bathing suit, as they tried to look in this water park for her ring and never found it, she realized something. She realized the woman she was on stage that day was a woman who was afraid that her husband would die and the magic would go out of her life. And here her husband had died, but the magic was still there. The kids were growing up, they're beautiful, they're full of life, there's still magic in her life.
My job as a father is not to tell my daughters what dress to wear, not to tell them what to do. My job is to tell my girls I love them. And Sherry that I love her too, obviously. Yeah. We've got to hug our kids and we've got to make the most of each moment because you never know.